Hello. I just made the mistake of running up and down the stairs twice to get something, and now I'm out of breath.
I'll give you a long intro.
I'm not as fit as I used to be.
It is a delight to welcome Donna Ashworth here tonight. We will open the floor to questions after our conversation, so do have a think about what you might like to ask. And Donna will be signing copies of her book at the end of the session, which I think are on sale by the Bell Bookshop at the back there.
Hello.
The UK's best-selling poet, Donna Ashworth, crafts soulful verse that soothes, gives strength, and teaches us to be kinder to ourselves. Her powerful new collection of wisdom and poetry, Growing Brave, has been written with the mission of helping us to find strength and courage on the days when we feel lost. And don't we all need some of that in our lives? Author of 9 books and an online following of millions, including a raft of celebrity devotees, Donna continues to bring poetry to fresh audiences, and in doing so, is keeping its magic alive. And so today, on National Poetry Day, I am thrilled to welcome Donna Ashworth to the Henley Literary Festival.
Very poetic.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Donna has had a very busy day. Can you tell
Yes.
everyone what you've been doing?
So I have been at Waterstones Piccadilly today, and I was the poet in residence. And I recorded a few things, and then people sent me prompts, and I chose a prompt and wrote a poem. So that was really good fun, and it was just nice to be sort of in the hub, in a bookshop on Poetry Day. I love bookshops. They're just such a happy place. I think most people here probably feel like that about bookshops. And then I went and I filmed something for Sky TV, which was very exciting. And on the way in, I bumped into 2 lovely women who I've met from Instagram, Julia Bradbury and Kelsey Parker, who have both connected with me through the poetry. So we had the way women do, oh my goodness, we've never met, but I love you. And everybody was like, oh, what's the, friends for life there. So that was fun. And then I almost missed my train to get to Henley. And then I wheeled around the corner. In fact, somebody stopped and took a photo of me on the way and said, we're hoping to see you at 8. And I was like, I'm getting there. And then I'm here.
And you still look so good.
Oh, thank you. I had a quick turnaround in the hotel.
Brilliant, brilliant. So on to the book. You explain in your author's note at the front that the focus word for the past year, which presumably was last year when you wrote this, has been brave. So tell us more about that and how that inspired this beautiful book.
Well, I choose a focus word every year because I don't know about everybody else, but New Year resolutions to me are torturous. I mean, January is one of the hardest times for me. The festive season is wonderful. I love it. But come January, we are depleted. We are skint. We are, overweight and tired. And, there's nothing to look forward to particularly. The weather is, and become a whole new person. Why don't you do all the things that you didn't manage to do all year last year? Maybe now's a great time. So I like a focus word instead because I think I spend January regenerating, which I think is really sensible. And I don't start to make any changes till February. And then I think, March is better because it gets lighter in March and you're more ready. But you've thought about it for the first 2 months. So you're kind of ready to think, is this a real change or is this a punish myself for all the bad behaviour in December change, and there's a difference. So the focus word is brilliant because it helps you hone in on things that are going on in your life or how you feel about yourself. And it really doesn't matter what the word is. It's the practice of thinking about the word. So whenever you get upset or stressed or pressure mounts, you think about that word and how that changes your perspective in that moment. And I chose brave last year because I was having to be physically brave by public speaking. And I used to sing in my early teenage years and early 20s. And so people who knew me then would think, oh, well, you used to be a performer. What's the difference? But as we get older and we get into midlife, we can really box ourselves in with fear. And, you kind of just think you're done. You can't do the things that you did before, or you're too old, or maybe when you have kids, you think you're not that person anymore. So it really was like, how can I stand up and speak? It was so difficult. So practically, I needed to grow my brave. And I thought about a plant. I'm terrible at keeping plants alive. But I figured if I used this analogy and got a plant and literally grew the brave, I could apply it on a daily basis to, small changes, little bit of water, little bit of love, lots of light. And it really helped me. So I thought this is going to be the theme of the next book, because we're brave in so many ways all of the time. And we don't stop to look at the ways in which we're brave, because they kind of fly under the radar of what feels brave. We look at the big things that we do. That was brave. But actually, people are brave on a daily basis, every hour, every minute. Just being alive is brave, and continuing on after loss, loving again, choosing love, choosing light every day is so brave. And I wanted to really focus in on all the ways in which we're brave. Sorry, I really go on. That was one Brilliant. Small question.
Bravery is a really interesting thing, though, isn't it? Because I think what people's views on what constitutes being brave can be quite different.
Yes.
Do you think it's intrinsic, or do you think it's something that can be taught or nurtured?
I think everything can be taught and nurtured. It's the same with hope, and it's the same with joy, and it's the same with, anything that you look at like that. If you separate it from yourself and think of it as a living thing, you can nurture it, you can grow it. But women especially are intrinsically brave, and we don't know the ways in which we're brave because they're just seen as normal. All the changes that we go through, all of the hurdles that we face, the way we give ourselves to motherhood and all of the hormonal changes that affect us. It's hard if you're not female, it's hard to understand what that means. It's a lot. And I think that people that jump off buildings or skydive, to me, that's not brave. That's a problem. Unless you're doing it for charity, that's you need to work that one out. That's an issue. That's adrenaline seeking. You're trying to get high, trying to almost kill yourself, and that to me is not bravery. That's a completely different thing. So, it's brave for me to sit here tonight. It's brave for you to sit here tonight. It's often brave to come out and go to things at night or at any time when you know it might make you feel a certain kind of way or it might bring stuff up. So we've all been brave 50 times today, and we wouldn't particularly know about it.
Yeah. And bravery doesn't mean having no fear, does it?
No, the opposite of that. You must accept fear. Fear has been a big issue for me my entire life. I can remember being 17, 15, 16, and my mum saying to me, fear is high today. I can feel it, it's in your throat. And I would be like, what does that mean? That's a very strange thing to say. There's nothing in my throat. But she's a very spiritual person who can, see the way energy moves. And she's really a fascinating human being. I'm like her little witch in training. But she's the one you really want to talk to, although she would not come here and sit on this sofa in a million years. So fear has been a big thing for me. So I would act out because of the fear. You get defensive, you get angry because you know you're going to be afraid or you don't want to be caught out in the fear. So the biggest thing is to accept that whatever you do, you're going to do it afraid. Or you're going to do it with fear. Fear is going to be with you, but it doesn't need to be you. It doesn't need to consume you. I like to think of it as in my backpack, and I'll take you with me, but you're behind me. You're not in me, you're not, I'm not going to let you overwhelm. And I think the minute that you accept, that it's very clear to me that everything that I do in life, even if it's a successful thing, it's going to be a messy thing. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. And that's something I came to realise sort of in the last year. I'm not allowed to have anything perfect. That's the way it's going to be for me. And I love that now that I'm aware of it, that I have to do it imperfectly. There has to be an element of messy to it and raw, and, and that is going to become the beauty of it. So recognizing what type of fear is it? Is this a fear that's going to protect you? Or is it the fear that society gave you that is caging you in? One will cage you in and one will keep you safe. And spotting the difference between the two is important.
Your book is a collection of poems and sayings and passages. How do you recommend that we read it? Because it's not as straightforward as a novel where you go from start to finish, is it?
I think if you feel like sort of sitting down and reading it all first, that's great. But they were designed to be picked up whenever you pass it or feel the need, or as part of your daily ritual, if you've got, daily page habit or journaling habit. It was designed to be picked up and just opened at any random page. If you've got a friend who needs something from you and you're not sure what to say, you pick it up. If you've got a child going through something, pick it up, open it at the random page. And even if it's not entirely relevant, there will be a seed of something in there. The book always seems to know what it is that you need to know. There will be a seed of something in there that is going to kickstart the thought process, that's going to kickstart whatever it is that you need to bring for yourself. So I like to use that method.
I think that's the beauty of poetry, isn't it? That you can dip in and out.
Yeah. And when you're overwhelmed, you don't want to read a lot. When you're busy, stressed, sad, whatever it is, you don't have the mental capacity to consume a lot of information, but you desperately need something. So that's why talking to a friend or, talking to someone professional is brilliant, because you need to keep moving that energy along and getting it all out of the dark. But you can't sit down and say, I know this self-help book is going to help me. It says it on the cover, but I can't get there. My brain is just going, does anybody get that? Almost like a paralysis when you know you need to do something to help yourself, but you can't get there. So that's what happens to me. And when I was a teenager, when I first hit a wall and I was anorexic and I had really sort of, a nervous breakdown, I suppose we would call it, I couldn't find anything like that. I eventually got Louise Hay, and I got her books from America at the time, and they completely and utterly saved me. They really saved my life, because when you find a book that has some sort of understanding in it or knowing, you think, that's what I've been craving, just somebody, I know how you feel, or I can help. These little connections and these moments are everything.
It's incredible that they had to come from America. There's nothing like that here.
It was very thin on the ground. My mum took me, because when I went to the doctor with anorexia, he said, come back next week and try and put some weight on. That was what happened at that time. I mean, we're going back 30 years now, 32 years. So my mum took a look at me and thought, right, we've got a choice here. Either I'm going to go downhill and not be here anymore, or we go down a spiritual route. So my 17th birthday was spent doing a Reiki weekend, learning how to do Reiki, being inaugurated into the world of Reiki. And nobody else my age was doing that, was not doing Reiki at the weekends and walking about with Louise Hay under your arm. It wasn't cool, but it saved me.
You dedicate the book to your followers, of which there are millions worldwide, but you've achieved a rare feat of really making it feel like an intimate, meaningful community. How important is it to you that your readers feel a part of something through your words?
I think it's 100% vital. I think the reason that I'm here doing this is not because of anything other than the community that we built online. I don't know if anybody here follows me or has been for some time. Anybody for a while? Yeah? So anybody from Ladies Pass It On days? Yeah? Oh, one? Yay! So it's most important for me to reply to as many people as I can, not on the threads, because Facebook bans you for doing that. It thinks that you're spamming your own content, and then you get banished for 24 hours, which is so frustrating. But certainly the messages, and that's what most of my time is spent deleting the men, by the way. Now that we're face to face, I want you to know I sweep up every morning and every night, the same men, Andrew Goddard, whoever, I'm really impressed with your profile. What a beautiful smile you have. Can you send me a friend request? So aside from that, most of my time is spent replying, and I never want that to change, because I think that's the whole point. And I get so much back. Most of the poems that come out are through things that you've shared with me. It all comes back out and into some sort of verse or passage. It's a real exchange.
I bet. Can it sometimes feel overwhelming when you've got so many messages from people saying how powerful your words have been for them? Or is that part of the joy?
It's not overwhelming, and I don't think about it as me. And I think that's the key. So because that's a struggle. If somebody says to you, "Oh, you're amazing," you immediately go, you can't be, and it feels, so I see it as you're talking about this exchange that we've got. So when you say, this has been everything to me, or I can't tell you how much I love it, I hear this place on Facebook, these words, this book, this circle, this community, and that makes it, I think it makes it a lot healthier, and I think it makes it a lot more enjoyable. And I mean, I'm proud of it, and I do stop and look back and say well done to myself, because that's important. But I don't sort of sit and think about it as, they need me or they think I'm amazing. And therefore, it's not overwhelming, because I see it as part of this cycle, and I want to answer messages, and I want to do it. And on days when I can't do it, I don't do it. And then I wake up the next day and wait for that to pass, and then off I go. I don't push myself either, but the emotions are a lot, but they were always a lot for me. I walked about with those emotions anyway, but I felt helpless. I felt like the world was an awful, awful, sad place. Everyone was suffering, and there was nothing I could do about it, so I used to really get depressed. And now I think the world is a really sad place. Everybody is suffering, but maybe I can write something that will help 50 people here. And so there becomes a use to the pain that I feel or the sadness that I absorb. It becomes I'm able to act on it, which totally changes how heavy that is. Yeah. So it's cathartic in a way.
Absolutely. I am thrilled that Donna has agreed to do some readings for us this evening, and I'd like to go to the first one, which is one of my favourites in the book, Joy Comes Back, which is page 181.
Thank you. She said, I've written down the pages, and I said, I love you. Thank you. So this one has gone viral twice now, both times read by men. And what I'm finding now is that when men read the poems, there is a real magic, something really quite magical happens. And I think it's because men are not necessarily talking in the way that we are on the same level. It's getting better. And they're maybe not sharing poetry in the way that we share it, as in daily, for use, to be used, to be shared on a daily basis. So I'm starting to watch this energy now with men and how it's coming in. It's really quite fascinating. Anyway, I digress. This one is called Joy Comes Back, and it's the follow-up to Joy Chose You. When you finally realise that joy is less fireworks, more firefly, less orchestra, more birdsong, she will come back much more often. For joy will not fight with the fast pace of this life. She is not in the shiny or the new. She breathes in the basic, shimmers in the simple, and dances in the daily to and fro. Joy has been beckoning you for many a year, my friends. You were just too busy doing to see. The very next time, joy wraps her quiet warmth around you as the garden embraces your weary body in its wildness. tip her a nod. You cannot force her to stay. But if you are a gracious host, joy comes back.
Oh, you could hear a pin drop. Let's go back to the beginning, because you mentioned earlier the plan after school was not to be a writer, was it? It was to be a singer.
Well, it was to be a lawyer.
Oh.
And then that quickly fell by the wayside, and I thought, well, I probably could sing then, that'll do. And Mum and Dad were like, okay. But yeah, never a writer.
And did you have a love of poetry and writing then? Yeah. It was
I
always
always loved poetry. But I love simple poetry. I loved poetry that stirred something in my soul, and that had to be very message-driven, very emotional rather than intricate or clever. You know, I liked the messaging. It was always about the messaging. So when I started singing, I did cabaret singing for a while. I did the cruise ships. I was in a duo with my boyfriend. It was called Fresh Air. We spelled A-Y-R because we met in Butlins and Ayr. And then I went in to write my own album. And for me, it was always about the lyrics. And I was one of these really annoying singers that would make you pause it and say, did you hear that though? So I don't think you listened to the lyric on that. And they would be like, yeah, why not? It was always about the lyrics. That's what I loved, the way you could communicate with people through song. And I always loved poetry. I think everybody has somebody in their circle who writes a poem every now and again, or for a wedding, or, you know, for an occasion. Oh, such and such will write you a little poem. There's always someone. And that was me. So, and then I went into magazines, and so I was copywriting for years and years and years. So I've always written. But, well, first of all, is poetry a job? I didn't think that it was. I didn't think you could say, I'll be a poet, that'll be really clever, that'll be a great job. So I fell into this completely by chance. It started off as just sharing words on social media to bring people together and have a chat. And then I started to notice there was a gap. I started to notice that after Louise Hay, and obviously she does affirmations, but my poetry is almost like affirmation in poetry form. I think that's where it's come from. I saw a gap for daily words, daily pages that would be, you know, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not trained, but we're all alive and we're all living and we all feel. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could start sharing these little passages and poems that would, I know it's going to help. And you can gift it. You can't gift a self-help book. Sort your life out. Merry Christmas. But you can gift this, and you know it's going to help. You know, you don't know when it's going to help, but when the time's right, they'll pick it up. So I can't remember what the question was.
Well, then you then went on to launch Ladies Pass It On that you mentioned earlier. So that was 2017?
I think it was towards the end of 2017, and it was a blog.
But that wasn't under your own name, was it?
It was called ladiespassion.com, because I liked the way that rhymed. And I thought, because I used to work in magazines, I thought maybe I can do an online magazine, but it was just me. So I thought, I'll do a blog. Do you remember when everyone did a blog? That was the thing. So I thought, I can do a blog. And I made it all by myself. And it was hard work. And, you know, I used to interview women who had created their own business or done something that I thought was inspiring. And I had a sort of women at work section, and I had a health section. And then I sort of pressed send on it, thinking, oh, this is going to be so revealing and scary. And of course, nobody read it, because how would they? But then something really weird happened with that blog. It came up on my social media. One day I woke up and I had 400,000 hits. And it was 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was like, something very silly went viral. And then it just went tick, 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 tick. Do you know the way things do, that you had no idea that could even happen? And so that sort of happened quite a bit over a year. And that was when the poetry started to come out of it. I started to realise, I started sharing other people's quotes and poetry, and you loved it. And I loved it. And then I thought, I could write this. And then I thought, maybe I could write this. And then I did it, but I didn't put my name to it because that's terrifying. And then if it went well, I edited it and put my name to it. But the whole thing was terrifying and scary and weird, and it was just me. Always just me. So I had nobody to kind of share it with every day, you know, in the house or friends. And my friends would be like, what are you doing? Are you all right? Because you keep writing these really sad poems with hands, you know, rising up out of the water. And of course, that's how I was feeling, but I'd never had the guts to share it with anybody before. I would say, I'm fine. One of the first poems I wrote was, you know, I'm fine, and it was something like, I'm standing on a knife edge, I'm running out of time, the water's rushing in my ears, but still I say I'm fine. And my friends were like, okay, this is weird, what's wrong? But I've always lived with those feelings. I've just never thought you could talk about it. And here we are talking about it, and things have changed so much in 5 years. It's awesome to look back and see.
Yeah. And it was the pandemic, wasn't it, really, that sort of made the difference when your breakthrough poem came. What was your situation then? Because for you at that point, everything changed, didn't it?
My son had just been diagnosed with autism, and it was like someone had thrown a hand grenade into our house and then ran away. There was no sort of, it was the biggest shock ever. And looking back now, how were we shocked? But we were truly shocked. And then I think 6 months later, the pandemic hit. Now, we were in crisis because he was in crisis, finding it out. He was 11. We couldn't get him into school. He became very depressed, very deep, dark thoughts. And I was living in Manchester, away from my family, and everything was starting to implode. You know, in the way your life starts to completely fall apart, and the universe says to you, right, we're in for a big change here. And then the pandemic hit, and we couldn't do anything or go anywhere, and I thought, I'm gonna go under. So I signed up to volunteer, and I shopped for the old people in my village, which was a lifesaver for me. And I decided I would write every day on this page. By this time, I think I'd been putting my name to it for a while, and I was quite into the flow of the poetry. And then I thought, I'll just share every day what I'm feeling and thinking, and maybe people will come for hope, and, you know, maybe it'll help us all. And that was when everything really changed, because there was nothing else to do. We had to go online, and words became everything, because everything else had been taken. And so I was like, I have words, I'll help. And I had a real feeling at the start of the pandemic that nothing would ever be the same again, ever. And it never was. We moved in the summer. As soon as they lifted the lockdown, we moved to Scotland. I said, my son said, can I go to Granny? Can I go to Scottish Granny, please? I think she might heal me. And I said, she will heal you. I need Granny as well. So my husband's English and my kids are English, really. So we all upped and ran across the border, you know, when the lockdown was lifted. And it was a terribly difficult time because then it locked back down again. We couldn't sell our house. You know, we couldn't come back to pack. We weren't allowed. It was just one of those really crazy, scary times. We lived with Mum and Dad, the four of us, and Dave and Brian, the dogs. And they had 5 cats and a dog. So my dad was looking at me going, why are you keep coming home? He says, we move all the time and you find us. And so it was just one of those crazy, crazy times. But it was also an amazing time in many ways. I think for a lot of us, there was a lot of hardship and pain. And a lot of people lost people that they cannot possibly look back and find positives. But I think for many, there were some positives that lasted.
Yeah. Your incredibly moving poem, History Will Remember When the World Stopped, about the COVID pandemic was your breakthrough, wasn't it? Can you remember where you were when you wrote that?
In my bed. I'm always in my bed. My bedroom is my safe haven. I do have an office and I am quite professional now. I will come downstairs. I come downstairs to the office to do all my editing and my emails and my work. But the poetry, I need to be relaxed and comfortable, and then it just comes through. So I was in my bed with a cup of tea, and Dave and Brian would have been there. And that's pretty much where, and one of the boys would have been in there, and, you know, something would have been on the TV they would have been watching. It's not very romantic or professional, but that is basically where I am when I do most of it.
And how did it feel to witness that sort of swell of momentum and emotion as it just got shared across the world?
It was amazing, and it went viral in America first, and it was shared by mayors of cities, and it went into, I think, something like 2,000 different school yearbooks and things like that, and all manner of things. Medical, you know, staff were sharing it in America in schools, and songs. If you Google it on YouTube, there are so many songs. And when something goes viral like that, and you see all of the things, someone animated it, and it was just fascinating. I just thought it was beautiful how people took it. And I especially loved when the schools did it and the kids took a line each. And they, you know, their little voices, and it just was so moving. And Amnesty International contacted me and said, please, can we print this and send it out to all of our subscribers? They put it on a lovely yellow card, and I framed that little yellow card. It was just brilliant. It was just wonderful.
I bet. And then you quite quickly self-published your first incredibly successful collection of poetry. And I think it's really important to challenge this belief that by midlife you are what you are and that's it.
Yeah.
Because you really went for it with something different.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the most important messages I ever want to get across, is that if you feel like it, if you've got it in you and it's coming for you, I always say, oh, something's coming for me, I can feel it. Go with it, because the worst that can happen is that you don't ever go with it. I think that is harder than trying it and it not working out, or trying and failing, because I think we know now failure doesn't really exist. From every failure comes something valuable. And, you know, we're waking up to that knowledge now that failure is not a thing. It's just something that wasn't meant to continue. So whatever it is that you're doing, or somebody's told you that you can't do, or you're thinking, oh God, I can't do something new or do another new thing, because I've done so many new things, you start to think people judge you on not being able to stick at things or never seeing it through. But if it's right, you'll see it through. You know, if it's for you, you'll see it through. And I hope that women continually shout at other women, not shout, but remind one another that we can. You're only halfway through. And the first bit was spent worrying about things we should never have been, things people gave us to worry about. And now we know, the secret's out, we know we don't have to worry about that anymore. And we can actually do the things that we want and the things that we enjoy. So I hope I get that message across.
It's really about sort of giving yourself permission to follow what lights you up.
Yeah. Exactly. Even if it's just for you. You know, everybody does something that is ever so them. And it's probably the thing that somebody told you, oh, don't do that. You know, the things that people told me not to. It's funny because I met Pam Ayres at Morecambe Poetry Festival. I love Pam Ayres. Who doesn't love Pam Ayres? And I was introduced to her backstage, and Henry Normal, who I love, said, do you have any advice for Donna? And Pam said, don't tell them that you're nervous. And I was like, oh, I literally do that every single time and she went, oh no, don't do that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm too late. I think I've done that. And it's funny how she's right, of course, because that was a theatre. And you can't see anyone in a theatre. And you're on your own on a stage for an hour, sink or swim time. There's no time to chat. So in that environment, you know, I really channeled what she said and thought, right, go for it. But normally when it's just a chat, I will say, by the way, I'm absolutely paralysed with nerves tonight. So, but again, I've deviated from your question and I don't know. Sorry,
fine.
I've gone on a track and I can't get back. And that's a poem.
There we go.
Waiting to be written.
I really want to know a little bit more about your writing process. We now know that it's in bed, which is brilliant. Do you write at a certain time of day? Do you write every day? Do you plan what you'll write, or the topics, or is it purely instinctive? Do you just go with the flow?
I go with the flow as much as I can, and sometimes you need to bulk write. So I did a kids' poetry book before the summer, and they needed it. The illustrator had lots of time over summer, so she needed it. So I needed to sit down in my office and say, right, if I'm doing mental health messages for kids aged 7 to 12, what do I want to get? All the topics, and some schools had put together some whiteboards for me with all the things that the kids wanted, and I literally went through every one and did a poem. But because there was prompts, that felt quite organic as well. You know, I went with the flow, but mostly it comes when it comes. It doesn't matter where I am. I won't sit down and try and make it come. I can feel it circling around my head, and I know it's coming, and sometimes I'll know it might be about grief or it might be about bravery, but until it's ready I won't try and jot it down. But for people who want to write poetry or want to write anything, my advice is to literally start, because the more you think about it, how do I start? Just start. Put your pen to the paper or your fingers on the keyboard and blah, 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 because that is the release. And you might have to trawl through quite a lot of junk first, but eventually the flow, you'll take the foot off the hose pipe, because that's conformity and comparison and judgment is the foot on the hose pipe. And the minute you take it off, out comes the gold. And not trying to write like anybody else or think, will people think this is good? The minute you can get that out of the way, out it will come.
I like that. Your ability to frame emotion and express sentiment so simply and beautifully is such a skill. How much have your own mental health struggles and your overly sensitive, deeply thinking mind, as you say, actually been your superpower when it comes to writing?
Well, it is now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for a very long time. It was, it was an impingement. It was to be constantly managed and worked, So I've had to retrain my brain over decades to look for the light, not to look for the worst case scenario. I mean, my dad used to say to me, look for the worst case scenario and then you'll never be disappointed. And my sister's lived her entire life with that. And she goes straight to the worst, and then she's like happy all the time because it never happened. So, and my mum and I are on a completely different tangent where we're like, look at the sky and look at the... So it's funny because now the four of us are in a line with it. We're all exactly the same. Because we've trained... The ones that needed to train their brain more positively have done so, and the ones that needed to maybe come back a bit into reality have done so. And it's just about, it's hard to live this life. Even when life is good, it's hard. Even the blessings in your life can feel heavy sometimes because they can feel like pain. The joy of them can feel like pain. I mean, how often have you gone, oh, I'm crying, happy tears? Because there is a fine line between joy and pain. They cross over a lot of the time. It's hard to be human. And everybody needs so much direction and help in how best to manage their particular brain and the way it processes and the way they've been taught from day dot. Again, that's a poem that is starting to... the way they've been conditioned, because I was always told, don't tell everybody your business, don't give it away. Don't show emotion. My mum didn't tell me that, but school taught me that, and people in society. Why can't you be stoic? Why can't you be graceful and serene? Because I can't. So I think everybody would like to be a different way with their emotions and the way that they are. And actually, the way that you are is so very important, because it's when everybody tries to be the same way and we've got soldiers lined up, that's when it's really dangerous. That's when mental health can really suffer. And, we don't want soldiers being churned out of school and institutions. We want human beings who interact and share so that nothing feels shameful or heavy.
I think it's time for another reading, if we may. Page 70. I'll let you introduce this one.
And you can insert whatever word it is here that applies to you, whether it's singing or painting or reading or nothing. I want to do nothing. Whatever it is that you enjoy doing, you can insert that word here instead of write. This is called Eclipse the Sky. I want to write, but the floor is dirty. The washing is a mountain spewing heat, and the list of my failures from last week is itching to be ticked. I want to think all my randomly ridiculous thoughts without interruption. But outside chat is loud and messy, and life itself just will not let me sit with them. So my musings may soar and swoop like geese, finding their formation to form an orderly V. I want to play, but adulthood doth disallow, and yet my inner child screams loud, and she will not take no for an answer, that one. So no, I will not work right now, when I do not know what time's allowed to me on this journey of life. And if the sky will ever look again, quite as it does in this moment, I will be today. Just be today. Just in case I cannot be tomorrow. What point in risking all that sorrow? A day is only set to die if lists rise to eclipse the sky. Thank you.
So special hearing them read by you.
Thank you.
There's been a huge resurgence in the popularity of poetry. 2023 was the biggest year for poetry sales since records began.
Ever?
Yeah. And you, obviously, were the year's best-selling poet. I've got a list, actually, the top 20 biggest-selling poetry books of last year. You were number 1, number 2, number 4, number 14, and number 15. But interestingly, it's a really diverse list, actually. So you've got Kay Tempest and Lana Del Rey, who sort of bridge singing and poetry. Yeah. And then you've also got new translations of Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey, as well as Dante's Inferno, a new translation of that. I mean, it's incredible. What is it that has prompted this renewed popularity, do you think?
I think it's the pandemic, because I think after every collective conscious catastrophe, it brings people together in such a way, the collective suffering and the collective connection. Like war, there's always a rise in poetry after a war, because the war poetry comes out and there's a resurgence. So I think it's the pandemic. And I also think it's because poetry is evolving. I think poetry stayed sedentary for quite some time. You could get your sort of humourful poetry, but then you had your very serious poetry. And, you know, social media has allowed us to access things in short little bursts, and I think that works really well for poetry, because scroll, 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 cats make me smile, babies laughing make me happy, that's all wonderful. There's a little poem. Bam, your mindset has had a little juggle for the day. It's really powerful. It might not seem like it is. But if you're using social media properly, it can really work in your favour mental health-wise. So I do think it's the pandemic, and I do think Insta poetry has helped that as well.
I love what you write in the About section of your website. You say, poetry is not just for literary-minded poetry buffs. Yeah. It can be used in so many ways to simply ease the rub of this life, a balm, if you like. And as you've proved, sometimes simplicity is key.
I think so. I mean, I think if I've got 2 minutes of your time on a daily basis, and really that's what it is, I don't want to waste it. I want to get straight to the point. What is it I want you to think about? Or what am I trying to tell you? Or what do I want you to share with me? So I want to get straight to the point. And if I can do it prettily with nice words and good analogies and things, that's wonderful. But I don't want people to sit down and go, let's study this poem for an hour. What could it mean? Because emperor's new clothes, it could mean anything, you know. I like my poetry, like Mary Oliver and Seamus Heaney. I like to feel what the poet wanted me to feel, and simplicity to me is key.
I was going to say, what poets and poetry inspires you?
I like Mary Oliver. I love Mary Oliver. Does anybody else love Mary Oliver? But I've only recently discovered her in the last couple of years. I haven't been a poetry reader for a very long time, and again, I think that's something that you shut down. You know, I know people who are singers who don't listen to music because it upsets them in a way, because it makes them feel like they should be doing more with their music, or, you know, they're not seeing out their potential or things like that. And then when I did start writing poetry, I didn't want to read any in case it went in and I, you know, regurgitated it and you know, somehow copied it. So I became very fearful of poetry and, oh no, don't tell me, blah, blah, blah. So it's a funny thing, but now I really enjoy it again. And I'm seeing so many young poets come out on Instagram and TikTok, and that's a joy.
Your next book, Words to Live By, is coming next month. It's a little bit different, this one,
journal,
isn't it?
yeah.
Tell us about it.
So it's a daily journal, and the idea is that we're going to be doing our daily question together. So I'll come online and do a bit of it with you as well. But it's a question a day, a weekly reflection, a weekly poem, daily extracts from poems, and then a monthly reflection. And we choose a word every month. We choose one for the year that will go throughout the entire year, but we also get an opportunity to choose one every month to sort of hone further in on the mindfulness. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time because I think journaling is wonderful for anyone. But again, we've no time. So this is 3-4 lines a day. There's space to put more in if you want to. And then slightly longer at the end of the week and the month. And then looking back at 6 months and at the end of the year. So it was a big task, but I'm really pleased with it. And I think it's going to be really enjoyable to do. I'm looking forward to it.
And you've got a children's book coming out as well.
Coming out, that's next summer. So that's the every poem I've ever written, basically, in child form. But also I went through all of the things like being an only child. Oh, sorry. That was hideous.
She's got a really good children's book coming out. She's been very busy.
I don't know what happened there. Excuse me, you got it.
We were talking backstage and there's lots going on.
Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
So I'm going to sneeze now. Sorry. This is very unprofessional. So I went through everything that I thought they might need direction with or help for. So I'm really pleased with it. I think it's going to be lovely.
Excellent.
Fingers crossed.
Excellent. We can't wait.
Excuse me. Sorry.
It's okay. It's time.
Everything has to be messy that I do. See, I told you. I can't get through without something being messy and imperfect.
And for us all. Right. I'd love to open up the floor to questions.
Yes. Who's going to be brave? Who's going to grow brave?
If anybody's got a question, please raise your hand. There's some lovely ladies with microphones. Oh, no.
Come on, somebody's got a question.
Come on.
There we go. Lovely lady at the front. Thank you.
Well, gosh, it's just a very simple one. What was the first poem you remember writing and how old were you?
Oh. Now, that's a very good question. It's funny because I found one of my diaries when I was packing up some stuff in the house, and as awfully cringe as it was to read, because it's so difficult to read oh my goodness. It was like, no, stop. But the poetry wasn't very different from the poetry that I write now. You could tell it was me, and it was heartache. It was, pain and suffering and unrequited love, and when will this end, and why can't I be normal, and why am I so difficult, and, proper angsty teenage stuff. And I think I wrote a grief poem as well when my granddad passed when I was about 11. And I read that again, and that was actually really quite stirring and quite lovely. So I think probably that one. Thank you for asking, and well done for asking a question.
There was another hand behind, a couple of rows back. Is that person going to be brave and raise their hand again? Oh, yeah, okay.
Lovely lady here.
Hi, it's not actually a question, it's just a comment. And I loved your piece that you did on Instagram about Dame Maggie Smith.
Oh, thank you.
It was absolutely inspirational. It just got her got her just right.
Oh, I'm so glad. It's a funny one because I always think, you know, you don't want to sort of pile on and, you know, make it about you or, do you know what I mean? And try and sort of, but I love her. I've always loved her. And my son's called Brodie, and her, you know, Miss Jean Brodie was just huge. I just loved her in that. And she's just one of these people that as soon as I heard the news, I thought I need to put something down, because she had such a special thing that I don't know if we'll see twice. You know, that way that she had about her that was just so very her. So, yeah, so thank you for that. I'm glad I did it because it was received really lovely. Oh, the lights are up.
Hi, Donna.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Oh, is it on? Hello.
Oh, you all look lovely.
I'm hoping that you haven't personally experienced everything that you've written about, but I want to know how you so poignantly find the right words for so many different situations, good and bad.
Thank you. That's a very good question. It's complicated. Sometimes it's just very apparent to me that if I was going through that would help. And sometimes it comes from somewhere else. So my mum, having sort of brought me up in a very spiritual way, we've always sort of read energies, and, you know, for me, to be alive is to be connected to what happens after we're alive, or what happens with the energy of those who pass on. And I've always been like that. I can't remember not being like that. I've always had experiences from childhood where, you know, I would hear things. And it's not even that I'm hearing them. I don't physically hear them, but they would come through as though somebody said, will you just pass this message on? Which is a bit weird when you're a child and you come out with things like that and everybody's like, oh no, why is she saying that? But that's always just been my experience of this life. So a lot of them are just practical things that I've learned along the way, things that help me, and some of them have been passed through from somebody else to someone else. Hello.
Do you write with pen and paper, or do you?
No. Is that disappointing? I know. Everybody gets so disappointed. Sorry, it's not romantic. This is what I do. I've got a beautiful iPad Pro that I love, and when I open it up, it feels like, do you remember the jewellery boxes? And you would open them up, and there would be a light, and there would be music. It feels like that for me. I was telling Will at Waterstones today, because we had this whole conversation. I had a suit on, and I had my iPad, and I thought, this is very corporate. I'm going to take my jacket off and get a pen and pad for this photograph, because it's not giving off poetic vibes. But for me, the magic that is unleashed when I open up my iPad, everything has been written on there. Every book, every poem, every thought gets jotted down there. Every comment from you or anybody else comes through there. So it has that feeling for me, like I'm going into another dimension. So is that romantic? Does that help? But no, that's not very, you know, I just never have.
Do you jot down ideas as you're going about your day?
On my phone.
Okay.
Sorry. It's just the way, isn't it? And it's so useful and it's so convenient. And, you know, I will write down notes in my phone and they will make absolutely no sense whatsoever. It'll be like hurricane, shoe, hope. And then I'll go home and I'll be like, oh, yeah. Tick, 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 tick. And my husband and my sister laugh because they're like, oh, there she goes. Dig, 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 dig. And it's so, no, I'm afraid it's all done digitally. Sorry.
Hi. You talked about editing earlier, but I just wondered out of interest how much you end up editing your poems, or whether, because with all the sort of spiritual elements to it, do you just let it flow
Yes.
and let it go, as it were?
yeah.
Sorry to rhyme that was bad.
Yeah, no, that was good. I made a deal with myself at the very start that I would not edit and I would not judge and I would not... when you write, it's not for you, it's from you, or it's through you. So I would detach from it so that I didn't sort of feel judged or criticised or, you know, ruin it by editing it, because when it comes out, I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes you need to fine-tune it a little bit. But if you start chopping and changing, then where are you? What have you got? You're not where you began. And that's a different poem to me. So if I write something down and maybe I think, no, that didn't actually arrive the way I thought it was going to, move on and, you know, it'll come again in a different format. However, now that I'm doing properly writing books with an editor, I'm called upon to edit things sometimes, and mostly I say no. Because I say, well, no, because that's not what I said. Do you know what I mean? And it might be more perfect that way, but, you know, in every imperfect artwork, someone's breathtaking is found. You have to let it come out as it comes out, or it's not yours then. So, and I do change the odd word here and there, and I do change the same poem when I read it out from memory, might come out slightly differently, depending on the day. But for the most part, I thought the only way, I'm an overthinker, and I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I knew I would spoil it for myself if I edited and started thinking, oh, they'll criticise me, or people might say, well, I don't like that line. Well, then that's not the poem for you. You know, there are a million other poems that will be for you. You've got to let the poem find its audience. The poem is not bad. It's just not in the right place at the right time. And I think if we can look at it that way and see it as a sort of separate entity, go on, little poem, find your people. Oh, you didn't find them, did you? Never mind, it's not my fault. Then it takes the pressure off you, and it's got to be joyful and it's got to be enjoyable. And the minute it becomes, oh, other people are writing better than you, or maybe that's not going to be praised, then you've lost it, you've ruined it, you've spoiled it. So I try not, I mean, I had to take out one line from a poem that said, drink from a fresh stream whenever you can, and my editor was like, no, we cannot tell people to drink from a stream. And I was like, oh, they're not really going to drink from a stream. You know, it's about being free in nature and, you know, hug a tree and whatever. So, but I keep it to the very minimum. And I recommend that. Thank you.
Hi, Donna. Here I go.
Oh, hello.
Thank you so much for sharing about your son who's autistic. I too have a son who's recently been diagnosed.
Okay.
And I know that emotional roller coaster that you just described.
Yeah.
What I wanted to know is, are any of your poems sort of inspired from that event? And do you share any of your poetry with him at all?
How old is your son?
He is almost 10.
10. So my boys are 12 and 16, and no, I don't share any of the poetry with them because they're not interested. They don't want to know. Felix, who's 16, will say, oh, well done, Mum, aren't you? Well, it's quite a thing, aren't you? Amazing. But like, no, he doesn't want to hear any. My youngest hates it. He hates poetry. He hates having to do Rabbie Burns for his school every year on Rabbie Burns Day. So I don't. However, we're constantly talking about the way that we feel. We're constantly talking about better understanding our brains and processing our quirks. Our household is one where nobody is shamed for feeling or doing anything. We're all accepted, and my husband and I are really thriving in that attitude, which we changed everything when Felix was diagnosed. We slowed everything down. We pared everything back. He was in one of the top schools in England, and now he's in a special school for kids with autism. That was difficult. There's only 20 kids in that school. That felt like a real risk. But he's never been happier. He's never been healthier. You know, he's peaceful, and his nervous system is mostly regulated. So I know it's one of the bravest things I ever had to do was to take him out of mainstream school. But I know it was the right thing to do. So the atmosphere of sharing is alive in our house. I don't think anybody's kids particularly want to hear advice from them. But most of the things that I write come from that aspect of having, a neurodivergent brain, because I do as well. When your child is diagnosed, you start to look down the line. Is it me? Is it you? My husband's dyslexic. I am autistic and ADHD. And my nephews are both ADHD. So we have a very special household. Family gatherings are great fun. And my sister had 2 boys, and we had 4 boys. So from very young age, wherever we went, nobody took their eyes off of us. We were always the centre of attention, and never in a good way. And we were like, just once, can we have be the quiet ones that everybody's like, oh, lovely kids, aren't they? We're always like, but now they are so balanced and so safe and so loved. And it really is true that if you are accepted and safe and loved, there is nothing that you cannot achieve or get through. Everyone can thrive. Thank you for asking that.
I love that. I think it's probably time to finish the evening with another reading, our last reading of the evening.
What
It's
page
page
are we doing?
149.
149. This is becoming one of the most asked for poems from the book. And it's funny because you never know until the book comes out which poems are going to really travel and which ones are just going to be sort of lovely daily pillows for people to rest their head upon every now and again. But this one quickly jumped out and was picked up by a few people with a lot of followers, which gives it light, gives it wings. And it's basically how I feel about the people that I mostly know and the people that follow me, the atmosphere that we have. And it's called Yellow. Some people walk into your life with a light that can only be described as yellow, infusing the very air around with the silent sound of, this will be okay, nothing hard can stay. We will find a way together. We can reach calmer weather. These people, your yellows, are sunny, endlessly funny. They are warm and safe, a comforting place. They are a light things can grow in. Their heart they wholly throw in. They are cheerleaders for your win. And if you have a yellow in this life, keep them bright. They thrive on giving out their light, but they fight their own dark too. They need a colour beside them to push on through. And I think they found a fellow yellow in you. Thank you. You've been lovely, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming out on an evening. It's not easy.